reopen offices safely and also transition to hybrid work. So I thought it would be really useful to jump on here and run you through our main learnings over that process. But hopefully this will be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions as they come through, please do shout and put some questions in the chat box. But what I'll do is I'll break this down into two. The first is your initial reopening, so the key foundations we found to reopening safely, and then the moving towards hybrid work. So how to make flexible hybrid work effectively for your organisation. So to kick us off, in terms of the initial reopening, we've found there are three main pillars, if you like, to doing this safely, and that's capacity management, health surveys, and contact tracing. And touching briefly on capacity management, this is obviously restricting the number of people who are in the office or in your office any single day. To ensure that physical distancing can happen, and it's difficult for me to give you any sort of advice because so much depends on the layout of your office. The majority of our clients have restricted their initial capacity to somewhere between 25 and 50% seems to be the broad consensus, but so much depends on the layout of your office for in terms of how open your communal areas are, lift lobbies, bathrooms, kitchens, etc. So I'll move on from that. Then health surveys. So health surveys is really important to send out to obviously those going into the office every day. You don't need to worry about sending these to those who are remaining at home, just those who are going into the office. And depending on your organization, we'll send either the health surveys in the morning or the previous evening, depending on how quickly your employees answer those questions. And depending on the size of your organization, your legal team might give you specific questions that you need to ask. However, the questions that we ask is around symptoms. Are you experiencing any of the NHS standard COVID symptoms, which are obviously cough, loss of taste or smell, and or a fever? And we send that out to all employees that are going into the office that day. And obviously, if they respond positively to that, so if they say yes, I've got one of the symptoms, then we'll remove them straight out of the office schedule and alert everyone that has happened. Finally, contact tracing. It is obviously incredibly important to have an accurate list of who has been in the office on any particular day. And you do this to look back if the worst case scenario happens and one of your employees tests positive for COVID, so that you've got a record of this. Now, there are a number of ways of doing this. One is keeping a spreadsheet so that each employee can mark their attendance in the office as they plan to go in. That can work, we find, quite well for smaller businesses, but as soon as you get beyond 30 to 40 employees, it can get a little lightweight because people can easily remove other people's names or add their names in on the wrong day. It's easy to make mistakes. So if you've got a medium to large size organization, I would look at actually investing in an app to do this for yourselves. The other way of doing it is via your scanning code, so keeping a list of everyone that's gone into the office based on who scanned their entry. And then finally, there are obviously a host of desk booking platforms, of which we are one, but there are a lot out there in the market, and I'm sure you've been experimenting and speaking with potential options. The one thing I would say is, when it comes to contact tracing, it's really hard to get 100% adoption across your employee base if they're using a standalone app. You know, if you have to make your employees download a phone app or log into a web app system, we've found it especially hard to get employees actually to use it. Now, moving on to hybrid work, we've been working with businesses, as I mentioned, in Australia for the last 6 months now, and it's really interesting to see how it's developed, because it's just been a huge experiment for a lot of businesses. So I thought it'd be helpful to talk through what we're seeing in terms of trends, and how it's playing out down in Australia, based on early 6 months. And one of the first, actually, before I dive into that, I should define what I mean by hybrid work, if you're not familiar with the term. Hybrid work describes any work setup where you're not going in 5 days a week and you're not completely remote. So your employees are coming in 2 to 3 days a week, perhaps a little more, perhaps a little less, but they're working both at home and at the office. And if you choose to implement such a strategy, the first thing that you'll have to ask yourself is whether you want a top-down or bottom-up management approach. So top-down is you saying to your employees, I expect you to be in the office twice a week, for example, or telling your sales team, I expect you to be in Monday, Tuesday, and your marketing team to be in Wednesday and Thursday. Bottom up is then obviously the opposite. So you're leaving it in the hands of your employees to choose the most effective days for them. So based on their work patterns, their workloads, and frankly, what's most productive for you or for each employee. And what you choose there will completely depend on your culture, really, as an organization, and how much you can trust, for want of a better word, your employees to make the right decisions. We found that if you do have a very trusting culture in your office, the bottom-up approach works best, because over the last year or so, employees have really appreciated and got used to the autonomy of choosing where they work each day. And we've seen examples of employees being disappointed when that's taken away from them. So if you can make bottom-up work, then I'd really suggest you do so. And a nice kind of 50-50 approach is letting the individual team management decide. So if you have teams of, say, between 5 and 10 people, having the head of that team get together and with their team and decide when they're in the office. So head of sales deciding they're in the office on Mondays and Tuesdays. And the reason that can work really well is they can take account of the individual preferences of their team members that you probably can't from a high level senior management perspective. So say, for example, your a certain member of the team needs to take their kids to childcare on Tuesdays or pick them up from school on Thursdays, and they can take that into consideration. Now, a second interesting trend we're seeing, if you're starting to think about, okay, now we've decided to adopt hybrid work, how many people will actually be coming into the office every day? And so there's 2 trends we're seeing that will help you think through that. The first is junior versus senior employees. Now, what we're seeing is junior employees are really excited to get back to the office, whereas more senior employees are not so excited to get back to the office. They're very happy to keep working from home as much as possible. And the reason behind that is obvious. Your junior employees are probably living in house shares. They've been sitting around kitchen tables on Zoom calls all year with other households, without other housemates. And added to that, we found they really miss the social aspect of the office. Friday after work drinks, as an example. And so if you've got a very young team, if you've got a lot of junior employees, you'll probably see a lot more people coming back to the office and returning much quicker as well. Then on the senior aspect, as you can probably imagine, they have a much more comfortable at-home work setup. They've probably got their own office, and they've, I can imagine, enjoyed working from home and spending more time with their family. So if you have a much heavier skew towards senior-based employees, you'll likely see fewer employees come back to the office soon, at least. Then in terms of collaborative versus individualistic roles, what we're seeing from a high level is employees taking a step back and deciding, right, when I've got deep focused work to conduct, I'll stay at home. But when I've got more collaborative work, where I need the input of my colleagues, I'll go into the office. And so it obviously follows that that if you've got very collaborative roles, so to use an example, if you've got a lot of marketing roles, sales-based roles that involve a lot of people, a lot of collaboration, getting around a whiteboard, you'll see a lot more people return to the office much quicker. Whereas if you have a much more individualistic team, so say, for example, software engineers, as an example, you might see less people return to the office quickly. So moving on from trends, we've seen 4 clear ways of really making hybrid work. Because what happened in Australia was companies returned to the office and they just tried to muddle through initially. So they didn't really put any procedures in place. And I should clarify, this is post-COVID. So this is after that COVID was a concern in the country, and they're really just concentrating on hybrid work. They didn't really put any procedures in place, and they just kind of let people come in and out of the office. And that was a bit of a disaster, frankly. It resulted in no one using the office because for reasons that I'll go into now, you can't see when your colleagues are in the office. So nobody wanted to commute in for an hour, half an hour, just to sit in the office on their own. So nobody actually went in. So we found there are 4 key elements of making hybrid work. The first is clear communication. So making it really easy for colleagues to see when their teammates or other colleagues are in the office. So you can see that particular people are in the office on Wednesday and Friday, they might choose to join them in on Wednesday and Friday. And that allows them to structure their whole working week around that, and it really gets your office back to its collaborative best as it was pre-COVID. The second is team coordination. So what we've seen fall down a lot is when teams are broken up. So say, for example, your sales team, and you tell half the team to go in on Monday and half the team to go on Tuesday. We found that doesn't really work, because what they end up doing is just everyone sits on Zoom anyway. So they don't have the benefit of being in the office. They don't have the benefit of being at home. So what I'd really suggest is trying to figuring out a schedule amongst your team where whole teams of people are in the office together. So the whole sales team are in on Monday, whole marketing team are in on Tuesday, etc. And then taking that one step further, making that schedule consistent. We've found that employees have really enjoyed getting into a consistent schedule. So they're always in the office on Mondays, Tuesdays, for example, or Wednesdays and Thursdays, rather than it being different days each week. And that allows them to get into a routine for their work. So, they might do some focused work at home on a Monday, preparing for their team meeting in the office on a Tuesday. And then finally, we're seeing a lot of investment in regular company events. Obviously, one of the downsides of hybrid flexible work is there will be less in-person interaction happening. And I should clarify again, this is post-COVID. So this is when, hopefully in the not too distant future, where you're not concerned about the safety of bringing large groups of people into the office together. But we've seen a lot of investment into regular company events to compensate for the lack of in-person interaction. So whether that's yoga in the morning, lunch and learns during the middle of the day, or more social occasions, Friday afternoon drinks, what have you. We're seeing a lot of people invest in that, and it's making a real difference in getting back to your cultural values that I'm sure you had post-COVID. So that's how that's the key things that we've learned. I'm just going to take a moment now to stop screen sharing and just run through a few of the questions that I've seen coming through. So Catherine has seen literally the opposite for junior versus senior. So all the oldies are in versus juniors who who have stayed at home by the sounds of it. So it may be very different for your organisation, but yeah, I'm sure it will be unique for everyone. Does anyone else have any questions? I'll give you a couple of minutes to write through if you have them now. And so we're seeing some corroboration from Michelle as well, saying all the senior employees are coming through. So maybe I'll be proven wrong on all points. So questions come through from Michelle asking if I feel that core business hours would be beneficial, e.g. 10 to 4. Yeah, it's a really good question, that. We've seen a lot of people in the early days of reopening allow people to come in the morning or afternoon. I think it's mostly just a bit of a comfort thing that they don't want to be in the office all day. For obvious reasons. So we're seeing we see a lot of people open up morning slots, from 9 till 1, for example, or from 1 till 5 or 6. But yeah, I haven't seen anyone stringently maintain that people have to be in the office from 10 till 4. Okay, that looks like it's all the questions that have come through, but if any others come through, feel free to keep chiming in. What I'll do now is give you a quick overview of the Officely platform, if there's any interest. If you've got no interest, feel free to drop off now, but I'll give you a quick 2-minute tour of how Officely works. So as I mentioned, our key USP obviously is we live within Slack. And the reason we do that is it makes it as easy as possible for your employees to use the system. You don't have to make them download yet another app or sign up to another app online. It all happens within Slack. And so if they're already a member to your workspace, they're a member to Officely. And once they're invited to use Officely, it will show up here on the left-hand side, as you can see, and they can click on the Officely name, and then it'll allow them to see the schedule. So they can see on any particular day who's in the office. So if I want to join, say, Chris and Barnaby in the office today, I just click join, and that books me a desk on the back end. I can also click view more here, and that allows me to see where individuals are sat. So you can see here we've got a collaboration space, we've got a sales area, for example, we've got a marketing area, and allows me to choose where I want to sit. We also have the option to add extras here. So if you've got dogs in the office, do you want people to book in? If you allow that, or bike racks or car parking spaces, anything you like, really, you can add on and allow people to book them. Now, I'm sure the most important thing for you at the moment is your contact tracing and health surveys. So I'll show you how that works. Health surveys, to start with, are sent out via Slack every morning or evening, depending on how you have it set up. So you can see here that we've got health surveys to be sent out at 7 a.m. every morning, and you can customize as you see fit. But the message that we send out are you experiencing any of the following symptoms? Temperature, cough, loss or smell of taste. And what happens if anyone responds positively to that? They say, you know, for example, I've got a cough, they'll automatically be taken out of the office schedule, and all office managers will be alerted straight away. We've also got contact tracing, and the way this is designed to be used is if you're unlucky enough that one of your employees tests positive for COVID, you can come in here and enter their name, and it returns if they've been in the office in the last 14 days, and if they have, it returns who they've been in the office with. So as you can see, I've just punched my name in there, and it's returned that I've been in the office with Dom, Buck, Craig, Lily, etc. over the last 14 days. And then it would obviously be up to you to reach out to those and ensure they go and get tested, because there might have been a contact tracing or contact event in the office. That's the kind of backbones of Officely and how we work and how we keep your team safe in the initial days. We've got a lot more features that allow you to embrace hybrid work that will hopefully be useful in about two to 3 months time. And if you've got any questions, if you want to dive into anything else in a little bit more detail, feel free to reach out over the Slack group, the Office Management Slack group. But it looks like we haven't had any more questions come through. So unless anything comes through now, thank you all very much for your time, and looking forward to chatting further if you wish over the Slack group.